Hello everyone, welcome to the next Blender Basics tutorial. Today we are going to look at how to add lights and create a rendered image as an output from Blender. So we created this model and now we are going to look at what are the different outputs and how to create this image. Okay, so the reason why you create anything in a 3D program is so that you get some kind of an output. So the different types of outputs are you can export this image and send it to a 3D printer so you can get a physical object. The other thing you can do is you can uh, export this and bring it into a game engine and use it as a game asset so you can interact with the object. So for example, the train can move and then collect coins, for example. And the other way you can get an output is to render an image or a movie. Okay, so we have not animated it, so there won't be any movie, but we can create an image, and we'll look at how to create a clean image like this. So it's like a studio setup where there's a white background and you have shadows and good lighting. All right, so we are going to look at how to create basic lighting, how to add a camera, and then use the basic render settings to render the object. So we have our object created. Now what we need is if you go to the last option here, viewport shading, it is going to show how the object looks. And if you go to render setup, there are three render engines. The default is Eevee. Eevee is more like a game engine look. Earlier Blender had a game engine to it as well, so Eevee works well for a game engine type of a look. A workbench is also there, which will only show the model. So if you want to showcase your modeling skills, a workbench can be used. And cycles is generally used for creating rendering outputs. Okay, so it creates interesting lights and good renders, but it takes longer time. Okay, so Eevee is much faster, but the lighting will be different, the output will look different. Eevee will get cycles will give you much better look. Okay, so we'll keep it to cycles right now. If you go to render and render image, it's going to render the image using cycles, and you can see right now there is some soft shadow, but there is no shadow on the ground because we don't have any ground plane. So I'll cancel this and we will add a ground plane. So we'll go to add mesh and plane, and we need the plane to be big. So I'm going to scale the plane big. Then we will go to edit mode and then go to edge mode, select this, shift select this, right click and subdivide. Then we can select this edge and slide it to the end. Then we can select this edge and move it up. So you get a backdrop. Okay, so if you go here, you can see it's a white plane and a background. Now we will set up our camera. So if you go to view, viewpoint, camera, now you are looking through the camera. So if you move the middle mouse button, you get out of the camera view. So how to stay in the camera view and change the camera angle? What you do is you go to view, viewpoint, camera, and then either you click here and go to view. There is item, tool, and view. You can click on lock camera to view. If you click on this, now you can middle mouse and now move the camera around. Okay, so this looks like a good camera angle, so I can see the back wheels also. And now there is a blank space here, so I can select this object and move it to fill the screen, and it's not big enough, so we can scale it. All right, so now we have a good camera setup. You can deselect this lock view And now our camera is set, our background is set, and now we have to add lights. Okay, so if you go to view, I will not render it. Let us add some lights and then see how it looks. So if you go to add light, there are different types of lights. So we are only going to look at area light. Okay, so once you add the area light, this is your light. And we'll go to the last option, so you can see how the area light affects the object. So you can see that the area light is adding light to the scene, and if I move it up, the effect of light is not so much. So we'll go to the light properties here, and you can see the power is 10, so we will make it 100. And you can see there is more light and there is shadow. The size of light is 1, so I will make it 10, so it is a bigger light. Okay, and as the size increases, the softness of the shadow will increase. Okay, so you can see that the shadow is much softer as the size increases. So what we are going to do is we need to introduce more light. So one thing is you can increase the intensity of the light, and what you can also do is duplicate this light. For example, I will right click and duplicate it, and you can see that the other light is created. We will rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, so if you go to the object view, this becomes minus 90. Okay, and we'll simply move it here, and it will go all the way back, because if you go to view, viewport, camera, we don't want the light to be in the camera. Okay, and now the light has to be big, so we go to light, and then this is 10, so we'll make it 20. Okay, so we'll also make this one 20. And then I will duplicate this, and we will rotate it, go to the object, and then make it 90 degrees. Okay, so what I will also do is increase the power of this to 300 and power of this to 300 as well. So there's more light in the scene. And say for example, there is some kind of a red wall on this side. So what we can do is change the color of that light to red, and you can see that it will have a reddish hue to it. Okay, we have to look through the camera, so make sure it doesn't come in the view. I just moved it and got it inside. So there will be some hint of red coming from that wall. All right. So let us look at a few things that you need to set up to get a good render. So if you go to render and render image now, what we will do is we'll further make it smaller. So if you go to the here, we have changed it to cycles. If you go down, the resolution is 1920 by 1080. So it's an HD TV resolution, but we will make it smaller. So we'll make it 720 by 405. And the resolution remains the same, just the image size is much smaller. So when we render it, it doesn't take long time to render. So we can see how the entire image looks, and once we're happy, we can then bump it up and make a bigger render. So you can see now there are shadows. The light is mainly coming from the left. There is some hint of red color in the back, and overall it has nice lighting to the scene. Okay, so basically that's how you do lighting. You can experiment with different settings and then try to make it better. For example, you can see that there is some noise. Maybe it's a little dark, you need more light coming in, so we can bump up the light values. So this, the main light, if you go to light properties, was 600. We can make it 1200, for example. And then the light from the top, we can make it 600. And the red light, which is area 2 or area 1, can be 600 as well. Okay, if you go to the next option here, looking for denoise, an option for denoise. Here it is. So in the scene option, the last option is denoising, so you need to turn that on so there's less noise. We're not animating anything, so we're not going to play with these. Okay, so cycles here, you can see that this exposure, maybe we can increase the exposure, and then it will add more light into the scene. You can increase the sampling, and if you increase the sampling, you get better render output, much smoother render output, but it takes more time. But I think we are good here, so we have increased the exposure value, we have added more light, and then if you go to render image again, you're going to get a good final look. So you can see that the light is hitting from the left side, which is the main source of light. There's a red light at the back. That's what we decided we wanted. You can change the intensity of the light or the color of how much red you want it, if you want it at all. And then you can experiment and see what different options you can get for the final output. Okay, and then you can then bump it up to a higher resolution. Okay, so you get a nice soft rendering. And one important thing to make sure is that when you create the plane, the plane is touching the object. You don't want the plane to be below the ground and then it looks. We can go to the X or Y axis and make sure. We can see that the plane is at 0, but the object is slightly moved up. And we look at wireframe and then arrange it. So that looks good. Okay, so you can go to view, viewpoint, camera. and then render it. So make sure that the wheels are on the ground. Okay, so this is important. You don't want the object floating in air. So that's about it. You can then finally go and make it 1280 by 720 and then render it out to get the final render output. Thank you for watching my tutorials. Keep tuned for more detailed study of how Blender works and how you can create various models, animate them. We'll